How about that running game this past Sunday? We haven't seen that often in the Gruden era, huh?
Yeah, it was very impressive. The last time we really saw them move the ball like that on the ground was week 2 last year against the Rams.
Yeah.
They went for over 200 that week in L.A., but it still wasn't quite as physical as they just kind of dominated the Cardinals. And, I think Adrian Peterson brings a ton to this team, at least early on while everybody's healthy, and he just establishes this kind of downhill, I'm going to run you over mindset. And I talked with a bunch of the offensive linemen, Morgan Moses, Sean Laval. Those guys love it. They want to be doing more of that, and we'll see. I think Jay Gruden's going to stick with it as long as he can.
Yeah, JP, I would expect more. But you see what Joe Mixon did to this Colts defense. He shredded them in week 1, 17 carries for 95 yards. That's 5.6 yards per carry. I would expect Jay Gruden's just going to attack them on the ground to open up the passing game as well.
Right, and I know some fans were kind of concerned or complained that there wasn't a downfield passing attack, but when you're just gashing a team on the ground, between what Peterson did and was able to do, I mean, they established the edges and then kind of worked their way inside. You don't need to have a downfield passing game. The way they controlled the time of possession in the first half of that game was just remarkable. Their defense looked incredible because their defense was hardly on the field. Any offensive coordinator, any head coach in the NFL will take that. The Redskins had the ball 23 minutes out of 30 minutes in the first half against the Cardinals in week 1. I mean,
it was just dominant. It was a dominant performance.
It was the first half of that game was as good as they've played in a very long time. And I've been talking about this for a few days out at the park. I think it's sustainable. Now, there's always the injury question. I mean, that's kind of the huge elephant in the room. But I don't see why with Peterson, Thompson, with that offensive line, and then with the defensive line they've created, you can't keep up similar efforts where really the focus is run the ball, stop the run.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, we always overreact, week to week, and we try not to, but it's hard. It's hard because they look so good. And then we saw the Colts, and the Colts' offensive line and defensive line weren't very good, and Luck had to drop back 53 times because they couldn't run the ball. So I guess the question, you kind of answered it: can they consistently run the ball with Peterson?
Well, as of now, there's no reason to think they can't. Again, you got a 33-year-old running back who hasn't played a full season since 2015. That will continue to linger probably throughout the year. Even if he gets through 14 games healthy, you'll wonder if he's okay for the playoffs and all of that. And he got a pretty heavy workload. He had 26 carries. That's not nothing. But I saw him in the locker room after the game. I've seen him a few times this week. He's a physical freak. He really is. Every ounce of his body is muscle. He seemed completely fine after the game and this week. I think the biggest issue for this Redskins team, and we've seen it in the past, is dropping games they shouldn't or showing up flat for games that they have a chance to win. Week 2 is a good chance for them to do that, because if this Skins team has those traits where they don't stay focused all the time, any of that, this is an easy one for them to show up a little lackadaisical and have an ugly first quarter, and next thing you know, they're trailing the Colts at home. If it's the same team that showed up last week, big lead again, because to your point, Lurch, yes, it's week 1. You don't want to overreact, but they certainly, on paper and on film last week, look like the better team.
And JP, we talked about this on TV on Sunday night. You almost forget how big of a factor Chris Thompson is. Chris Thompson was the MVP offensively of this team last year, and just him being on the field, we can talk about Adrian Peterson, and that was surprising to a lot of people, but Chris Thompson has the biggest impact, in my opinion, offensively on this team than anybody.
Well, it's also a great 1-2 punch, too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, they really got the run game going when they started going to the edges with Thompson, and then Peterson kind of followed suit. And then once they established that, Arizona couldn't get outside quick enough on these guys, and then they started pounding them inside. It was absolutely a great 1-2 punch. There's no reason to think that can't keep going. I mean, what we saw Thompson do last year without Peterson there was remarkable. So, and the good part about a lot of this, too, we haven't even mentioned the quarterback. Last year when we talked, could we ever go 5 minutes without mentioning the quarterback? Mm-hmm. It's remarkable I think Alex Smith had a flawless first game with the Skins. I also think he helps them so much in the run game. I mean, they were running RPOs. They ran one true speed option with Alex. He gives them more flexibility with what they can do in the run game, and that's something Jay Gruden talked about in the offseason. But honestly, the Redskins brass and coaching staff was so complimentary of Alex in the offseason that you kind of wondered, like, all right, how much of this is just we really like the new guy because we're over the old guy versus now we've seen it on the field, and you're like, wow, that actually really makes sense what they're able to do.